Hey everybody, and welcome back to Empty Pockets Ironworks. Thank you for joining me again this week. For this video today, we're actually not going to be out in the shop. If those of you that are disappointed, I'm sorry, but I've had a massive influx in requests for templates. I hand draw and come up with every template that we use here in the shop. They may be similar to other blacksmiths, but I make my own. For one, it gives individuality. For two, it makes it unique to Empty Pockets Ironworks. And three, it gives me some creative ownership over the item that I'm making. So, with that being said, we are working on, and when I say we, my wife and I, are working on devising a way of putting together finalized packets of, like, there'll be animal skulls. And there may be 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 different stencils or templates in that particular file folder that will be in PDF format that you can print out yourself. And that will be available for download via purchase. Now, I want to keep everything affordable. It won't be astronomical by no means. As an artist, though, I think I should be paid for my work. I think if you did something like that, you would expect to be as well. So, you know, keep in mind, they will cost, but it's not going to be anything more than, you know, it should be. With the influx in template requests, I'm no master at this by any means. I'm self-taught in basically every aspect of everything that I do, from conception to forging. Now, I was fortunate. I did grow up in a shop. I've talked to you guys about all that before. But most of this inherently has been self-taught, and by using resources such as YouTube to follow other people that I idolize in the same type of aspect in making things. So, with that being said, today I want to use this donated boar skull. This comes from northern Arkansas. It's great because it is rough, it's beat up, it's not perfect. It's been gnawed on by some critters, probably digging for some calcium and that sort of thing. But I'm going to take you through the process of what I do to draw a template. Now, materials and what you'll need. Obviously, you'll need a reference. This skull will be my reference. Mechanical pencils, Sharpies, maybe a ballpoint pen. I do suggest a hard or rigid ruler. Of course, a tape measure or something to measure with. Honestly, on a skull like this, one of those tapestry type tape measures, or one of those that like your wife may have in her sewing kit, if you can steal it, that's probably more ideal. This is what I have. And to make your life easier, aside from paper, I have really enjoyed using here recently this light board. Now this light board, and I'll show you guys more in depth on it later because we'll be drawing on it. Less than $20 from Amazon. It's super thin, very light. I'm not sponsored by any means. In fact, I don't even know the brand name of it. It's generic as all get out. But it's adjustable. It's got a simple on-off. It's super bright. And it plugs in via USB, so you can use any phone charger in any outlet in the house, and it's perfect. It's cheap enough that if something happens to it, you're not out a whole lot. It's small and compact. You can use it via anything that has a USB and produces power, and it's been absolutely phenomenal for making templates. Now, when I go to make the templates available to you folks, if you decide to purchase them and not draw your own, they will be more refined, and that's what this is helping in. I want the templates to look as perfect as possible, so that I believe a good template also gives you a good starting point. So if you go to attempt a deer skull, or you go to attempt a human skull, or anything along that lines, even flowers, you know, a good starting point is going to help you out tremendously in your efforts of forging. So with that, I'm going to change camera views. We're going to zoom in, take a little bit closer look at the skull. I'll kind of explain what I'm doing as far as taking reference. And hopefully this video is entertaining. Hopefully you like it. I know it's not out in the shop and it's not what we normally do, but I wanted to get this out there to you guys. So if you would, in the comments, please, please, please comment down below. Let me know if you'd be interested in purchasing templates. Let me know if you found this video helpful. If you could, please, I greatly, greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you're watching via TV, remember you can push the directional arrow on your remote. You can actually go up and click over and either subscribe if you haven't already and click the like button. And so, let's get started. Okay, so here we have our skull in all of its kind of morbid glory. And I'm just going to quickly get a reference over the top of the skull. And this is the neat thing about art. It doesn't have to be exact. So to the end of the nostril and the top mandible here, we're going to call it 10 inches. And just from ocular bone to ocular bone, we're looking at roughly 3 inches. So it's 10 by 3 inches wide at the top of the skull. So set it aside. Let's grab us a clean piece of paper here. Now what's neat about this light board is it's actually got some measurements on it. Now of course they're in millimeter, so for all of you European guys that's going to be a lot easier for you to figure out than me. But I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use my ruler and then just use a ballpoint pen or a pencil. I should probably be doing this in pencil, but we'll do it in ballpoint pen. We're going to give ourselves a stopping point here. Okay. And basically we're just going to draw a line, faint line, straight down the middle. Okay. Now then, in referencing the skull, from the back of the skull to the center of the tops of the ocular bones, we're looking at about 3 1/8 inch. So, judging from the back to 3 1/8. So that's what we'll do on our drawing now. Just basically come in 3 1/8. And then we're just going to make a line across. And this will give us our reference. Now, in doing this, what I'll do is I'll draw one side, and then I'll power on the light board. I'll trace that and then flip it, line it up at the 3 inch mark so that my spatial difference is what it needs to be, and then basically mirror that image on the other side so that both sides are exact on my template. Knowing that the skull is 3 inches wide at the tip of the ocular bones, I'm going to go out 1.5 inches and just make a line, and then the same thing on the opposite side. Now then, off camera you can't see it, but I'm measuring the top of the nostril bridge, and it is approximately 1 1/16. So we'll just call it 1 1/8 inches. And then we'll split the difference. And I realize that this may be kind of hard to see. I messed that up. Hope you guys at home aren't laughing at me right now. So anyway, doing this in faint line like I am right now without a marker, this is probably extremely hard to see. Later on, when we progress and we do portions of it with a magic marker, it'll show up a little bit better. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay this down next to it. I'm going to start here at the back, and I am just going to very lightly work in a rough sketch of what I see looking down from the top. Now I'm going to give myself a little bit over onto the other side right here, just so that I have a reference. And you know, I like how that looks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a Sharpie and I'm going to use a backup piece of paper underneath this just because I don't want to accidentally wipe any marker onto the whiteboard, or the white portion of the light board, excuse me. So basically I'm just going to real quickly now draw that out. Like so. Now we're going to turn on our light board and we're going to swap the pieces of paper. Like so. Now we're going to take the original drawing, flip it upside down, we're going to match up down here at the bottom, and then spatially make our difference in the top correct based on our line marks, which are hard to see. They're actually right here on both sides. And then we're going to draw that line in. Now this is relatively fast, so it may not be exactly precise, but it is indeed pretty darn close. So as I turn the light board off, as a reference, you can kind of see that's pretty close to where it needs to be. Now this is the portion where I was talking about earlier, thinking in halves. This difference between our previous drawing, the very end of the ocular bone, you have to have extra material. Otherwise that radius is going to be too tight and it won't achieve the look that you're going for. So what we have to do is basically, in your mind while you're drawing this, you have to flatten this portion out. Now, to make that easier, typically what I'll do is I will reference the line drawing that I did from the original side. This was the one that has the center marks on it. And I'll use it to make a rough sketch of the ocular bone in proportion to what I'm looking at from the side. And then I will line that up with our top template and scoot it away far enough to give me that half of material to allow for the bend. And I'm sure that's not the actual technical term. That's probably what I shouldn't be calling it. Hopefully those of you that may be watching this that are formally trained in art, please don't judge. This is just my method, and hopefully it helps you out. So looking at the ocular bone and how that comes down, I see that there is a point here that comes down. I would assume that that was probably connected at one point in time. Doesn't appear to be. I'm not familiar enough with boar skulls. This is the one that I have on hand, so this is what we're going to use. So I'm going to draw that as I see it down. Allow myself some room. This starts to dramatically swoop in. This bone here widens out. It's actually got a tail that in the ocular cavity turns inward. I don't know if you can see it or not. Hopefully it's not out of focus. But I'm going to add that into the drawing. And then we're going to come down and draw the mandible bridge Again, I don't know if that's an actual technical term. That's just what I'm calling it. So hopefully you guys can follow along. And like I said, this is just a rough drawing. A lot of this stuff will be shaped out. Now then, I've ran out of paper on this one. And that's okay. I've got to come down, now I've got to come back up, and then we'll continue on this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this distance here, and basically that's where I'm going to start here. Now these skulls are unique because this actually kind of tucks up underneath, but we're going to get rid of that area right there. We'll hit this from the side and we'll concave this in. So in drawing that and allowing for that movement in the material, thinking of steel, this is going to have to come down at more of an angle. Now before I get too far here, I need to look at the skull from the side, and we've got roughly 2 3/4, 2.5 inches. And that is pretty close to where I'm at. So you always want to reference your reference material, in this case the skull, and make sure that you are following along where it needs to be. Now this has got a very interesting bone structure here that surrounds the tusk. So you want to allow plenty of room for that to protrude and not worry too much about the actual final shaping, because you can do that with your tools in the shop on the steel. Then we're going to come around. Now this starts to tighten up here, so I'm probably actually too far away. In fact, I know I am just by looking at it. So we're going to end this right here. This portion of the drawing is actually going to go away because this is going to become that side piece. And that is going to come up, and then it has a jot that goes back out. So that looks pretty good right there. That jot that you see is this right here. This right here is, in my own way of thinking, is allowing enough spatial difference to form that around. This should meet in the center. The deer skull is the original template. That's how I did those, and then I actually welded them together in the center. Since then, I've actually developed a template, which I'll probably do with this, that has that weld out, and you just form it from that spot. I don't have any 11 by 17 paper, so I will have to do this solely on 8 by 10 sheets, and then we will probably have to tape them together. So there's the side view. I don't know if you can see that very well, but hopefully you can. Now the dimensions here look off. That is to allow enough curve in and to draw the material in when we're forging. Now as this material is pushed in and around, this distance here is going to close in. So we will retain our original dimension within reason. Again, this is art, it's not exact. If I was making a museum piece or an exact replica, I would try to keep those dimensions together. But as I'm doing this basically in real time with you, I don't want to say that I'm cutting corners, but I'm cutting corners. Another thing that we'll address here after a bit is the back half of the skull here. You want to leave enough material in your template that you can fold that in so that it gives some dimension to the skull and it's not just an open cavity in the back. Now keeping in that spatial distance or half you notice that I did not match my lines up with the top portion of the skull. And the reason that I did that is that allows for shaping and bending of the material to break it over in a 90. Like so. I'm going to be a little bit off the board and off the paper over here quite a bit. So when we go to tape this together later, that will be an issue. Now another way that a person could do this, and I will touch on this real quickly, is you could mark a center line, fold this in half, utilizing this side, you could actually draw that out. And you know what? In fact, I think we'll do that real quick. My original skulls were actually done that way, so let's do that here. Instead of relying on placing a template, we are going to find the center. Now this does not have to be exact. Just has to be close within reason, because you will notice exactly real fast if it lines up or not via the light board underneath. Because your top portion of your skull should be the same on both sides. Okay. And that looks like that lined up really well. So in saving time, we shall utilize it this way. Oops. And hopefully I'm not boring you to death. This is a completely different breakaway from any type of video format that I've ever done. And hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I would assume that most of you probably aren't even at this point. You've probably actually skipped forward to the end. But for those of you that are hanging out with me, you're awesome. So there we have our basic template. Now we do need to add in the portion here that I was talking about for the back of the skull. For that, we will lay it on the side. We'll reference our skull. And essentially, we know that this material here is going to split, so you want to leave that on your template. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically leave this as a whole piece of material back here. And we'll bring it up. It curves in back to here. And when you cut this out with a plasma, all of this material here that is left will be, you'll be able to forge that and push that in and utilize it to give some dimension to the back part of the skull here. So, and looking at that, it actually comes back a little bit further than what I've got here for material. And I may not actually use this template, but I just wanted to show you guys my process and method for designing templates for skulls, things that are a little bit more dynamic to draw. So basically that'll go like that, and then of course we will copy it onto the other side. Like so. So now we've got a really crazy piece. And if you determine later on that you don't want to cut all the way into here, or you want to cut that section out, that's entirely up to you. Now, on our final version, these lines here will go away. We will put in this line, that will be your cut line that you'll utilize with your plasma. Also, the end of it here we will tie together. Okay, so in all seriousness though, I wasn't quite prepared with this template as far as spatially how wide it was going to be. And unfortunately with my media, my paper, I don't have anything wide enough to compensate for the bottom parts of the jaw. So you'll have to use your imagination on that part. However, here is the skull, and here is the template. Now, as you can see, this allows for shaping of the ocular bones. You've got enough material here to move in. You can concave, convex. You've got enough back here that you can start forming out, and it gives you a good base. To work with. Now on the top of the skull, where this bends in back here at the back and it's got these little nodules, you know, this was just a quick demonstration, and I will refine this with some bigger paper, probably on poster board. And that's something else that I want to touch on too. If you do decide to do your own templates, after you've drawn your template up, before you cut it out, either cover it with packing tape and then cut it out so that it retains its rigidity, or do it on poster board. And no particular style. It's relatively cheap. You can pick it up at any big box store or hobby or craft store. But the paper itself, I love working with paper for my templates as opposed to utilizing anything else like cardboard and that sort of thing, because it does allow for movement. So if I'm designing a template and I haven't made the product yet that I'm going to be utilizing a template for, the paper allows me to kind of see what will bend, how it will bend, and what will behave in relationship to that bend. Newton's law comes into play very well with this kind of stuff. You know, everything has, you know, cause and effect. So, you know, if you bend certain directions, the paper will actually demonstrate very similar to what the steel structure will do based on its rigidity as far as your movements. So you can make 2 or 3 templates, cut them out, smash up one, really make sure that it's going to move, and then make adjustments to your template if necessary. Now with steel, the majority of it can be moved in or out, and depending on the types of dies and tools that you're utilizing to shape your piece, that will greatly depend or greatly impact what your final template looks like. Now, as with anything, my very first deer skull was not as good looking as the ones that I do now. And, you know, my very first bull skull, everything that you do, typically it gets better over time. So I'll do some refinement on this and expect a video coming up probably soon with a demonstration of a boar skull. I don't know that it'll be before the new year, but I wanted to get this out there to you guys, demonstrate how my process works with making templates. Hopefully I was able to keep it at least somewhat entertaining, and hopefully it's something that you can use in the future. And if you don't want to, like I said, we're going to have templates available for purchase before too long. So bear with me, and happy foraging and all that jazz, and I'll catch you guys here soon.